It started with the sound. Not a scream, not thunder, not the kind of sound that shocks you awake. No, this was something smaller, softer, deadlier. A faint tapping. Almost polite. Almost like a question. But not one that needed answering. I remember I was frozen, breath caught mid-inhale, hands hovering above the keyboard, the glow of the screen painting my face in pale blue. The show I was watching kept running, some crime series, now forgotten, but I wasn't watching anymore. My ears were tuned into that tapping, trying to explain it away, trying to convince myself it was the radiator, or the neighbor's cat, or something less wrong. But it wasn't. It was coming from the window. And I live on the 5th floor. Earlier that night, everything had felt normal. I made coffee, closed the blinds halfway, kicked off my shoes, tossed a hoodie on the back of the chair. It was one of those chilly spring nights when the city is half asleep, and the air has a sharpness that gets under your skin. I liked that feeling. Made things feel clearer. But now, it was as if the cold was pressing in through the walls, like the building itself had started breathing. The tapping stopped. That should have been a relief, but it wasn't. Because silence, when it shouldn't be silent, is worse. It holds its breath with you. My eyes stayed glued to the edge of the curtain, expecting movement. Nothing. I told myself it had to be the wind. Maybe a bird. Yeah, a bird. Even though no damn bird is out at 2 a.m. tapping politely on windows 5 stories up. I shook my head, cursed myself under my breath for being a coward, and forced a laugh that sounded like a cough in a morgue. Still, I got up. Had to check, just to be sure. The floor was cold under my socks. That detail stayed with me, like my body knew something my brain didn't. The kind of cold that doesn't come from weather, but from something dark. I crossed the room slowly, pushing the laptop closed as I passed the desk. The moment my hand touched the curtain, I paused. My heart was thudding now, not fast, but hard, like it wanted out. I pulled the curtain back in one swift motion, like ripping off a band-aid. Nothing. Just the city lights smeared in the glass. Street lamps humming. A few windows lit in the distance. No one. Nothing. I sighed, shook my head again. Just nerves. Just sleep deprivation and caffeine and maybe one too many true crime marathons. Then I saw them. Faint, but unmistakable. Fingerprints. 5 of them. Smudged against the outside of the glass. Right at eye level. They hadn't been there earlier. I was sure of it. I clean the windows every Sunday, OCD, maybe, or just habit. But these, they were fresh. The kind of smudge you'd leave if you pressed your hand softly to cold glass. From the outside. My building doesn't have balconies. No ledges. Just bare concrete walls dropping straight to the alley 5 stories below. I backed away, slowly at first, then faster. I yanked the curtain shut like it could erase what I saw. Sat back down, this time not for the show, but just to sit, to think. My ears felt too sharp, picking up every hum and creak in the apartment. The fridge kicked on and I nearly screamed. I clenched my fists, tried to breathe slow. It's fine. It's nothing. Maybe someone pranked me. Maybe a drone. A fucking squirrel with sticky paws and a death wish. I waited. 5 minutes, maybe 10. Curiosity, that cursed instinct, started eating at me. What if it was gone? What if it was still there? I needed to know. I stood again, moved toward the window with slower steps this time, almost reverent. Like approaching a grave. I hesitated, then opened the curtain a second time. There was no one at the window. But further down, on the smooth concrete wall, I saw movement. Something, or someone, was climbing down. No rope. No gear. Just fingers and bare feet gripping the wall like it was made of flesh instead of cement. I froze. My breath left me. Not from fear, not just yet, but from sheer disbelief. The figure was human-shaped, but wrong. Limbs too long. Back too arched. It moved like a spider. And then it stopped. Turned its head upward toward me. It had a mouth. A wide, lipless grin stretched too far across its face. but it had no eyes. I didn't scream. Not because I was brave, or numb, or anything noble like that. I simply couldn't. The breath was gone, sucked out of me like the room had suddenly dropped into a vacuum. My legs locked beneath me, and for a moment, I wasn't even sure I was alive. My pulse throbbed in my ears, thick and wet and panicked, and I could feel sweat prickling the back of my neck even though the air in the room had turned glacial. That thing, whatever it was, held its position for several seconds, its hands pressed flat against the wall like suction cups, its bare feet planted with impossible grip on vertical concrete, its face tilted straight at me. That grin, it wasn't playful or threatening. It was aware. It knew I was watching. It wanted me to watch. The moment broke when it began to move again, slow and deliberate, like a mime descending an invisible staircase. Every shift of its limbs was smooth and precise, as though gravity had no power over it, like the wall had become a part of its body. I stumbled back from the window, nearly tripping over the edge of the rug. My hand found the side of the desk, gripping it until my knuckles popped. There was no logic left in me, no explanation, no comforting thought to hold on to. My thoughts were shattered glass, cutting at me from every direction. I should have called someone. I should have screamed, taken a photo, done anything. But all I could do was stand there, half-bent, trying to make the world make sense again. The apartment felt different now. It wasn't just cold, it was watching me. The shadows had weight. The corners of the room seemed to stretch, curling inward like the walls had started to breathe. I turned off the lamp without thinking, as if darkness would hide me better, make me invisible to that thing if it decided to come back up. But the darkness didn't help. It pressed in around me, thick and close and silent. The only light left was from the laptop, still glowing faintly where I'd left it, casting long, unnatural shadows that shifted every time I moved. I sat back down in the chair, more out of desperation than logic, and tried to will myself into calm. I wanted to believe it was over, that whatever it was had gone, crawling down into the alley to vanish into some forgotten nightmare. But even as I told myself that, I knew it was a lie. That kind of wrong doesn't just leave. It lingers. It infects. And it was still out there. Maybe not right outside my window anymore, but close. I could feel it. Like a needle held just above the skin. I opened the laptop again, not because I wanted to watch anything, but because the noise, any noise, was better than the silence. The buffering screen popped up, and for a moment, I felt almost normal again. Then the video started playing, except it wasn't my show. It was me. A live feed. From the fire escape that shouldn't exist outside my window. My hands began to tremble, fingers hovering above the keyboard like they didn't belong to me anymore. On screen, I could see myself, backlit, ghost pale, hunched over the laptop, the window and curtain behind me slightly open. The camera was angled just right to capture everything from outside, like someone had mounted it specifically to watch me. My reflection flickered on the glass behind me, but in the feed, there was something else in the reflection. Not me. Not entirely. A second shape. Just barely visible. Close to the glass. Close to me. I turned around so fast the chair fell backward with a hard crack. The curtain was still open a few inches, and the window was shut, but the prints were gone. I hadn't heard anything. No creak, no tap, no hiss of movement. Just my own heartbeat and the distant hum of the city. I backed toward the door, one hand fishing for my phone, the other gripping the edge of the kitchen counter like it might anchor me to something sane. I didn't want to look back at the screen. I already knew it would be empty now. I already knew the thing wasn't outside anymore. It was inside. And it was waiting. I don't remember unlocking the door, but I must have. I must have done something that made it possible, because the air in the apartment had shifted entirely, as if some unspoken agreement between the world outside and the space I called mine had been violated. It no longer felt like my apartment. It felt borrowed. Inhabited. As though something else had quietly stepped in and laid claim to it while I wasn't looking. I backed deeper into the narrow kitchen, every instinct begging me to run, to leap through the window if necessary, to claw my way out of this cursed place by any means possible. But my legs wouldn't move. It wasn't just fear, it was recognition. Somewhere, deep and festering, I knew this feeling. Like remembering a scent from a nightmare. Something buried. Something old. The temperature dropped again, sudden and unnatural. My breath puffed out in small clouds, and the sound of the city, the muffled honking, the sirens, the television through the neighbor's wall, everything just stopped. Like the world had taken a long, quiet breath and wasn't planning to let it out. I dared a glance back toward the living room, toward the laptop still glowing like a beacon in the dark. The screen had gone black, not off, but black, as if it were showing something too dark to see. And then, from deep inside that false silence, came the softest sound imaginable. A wet whisper. Like skin peeling slowly off glass. My spine locked. I turned. Slowly. Because I had no choice. My body no longer belonged to me. I was just a passenger now. The curtain shifted. Not from wind. From intent. It moved as though fingers, long, deliberate fingers, had brushed it aside. There was nothing behind it, just the window, just the night beyond. But I knew that wasn't true. I knew what I'd see if I opened it fully. I knew. And yet, I did it anyway. I stepped forward and drew the curtain open wide, revealing nothing but the night sky and the scattered lights of the street far below. The window was closed, locked. No fire escape. No ledge. No prints. Just clean, undisturbed glass. For a moment, I almost let myself believe. Almost. But then I saw it. Not outside. Inside. In the reflection. Standing behind me. Tall. Too tall. Shoulders pressed to the ceiling. That face again, stretched and waxen, mouth split in that same grin, still eyeless, yet staring straight into me. Its hands hung too low, too close to the ground, and its chest rose and fell in shallow, eager rhythm, like it had waited a long time for this. I didn't turn around. I didn't move. I just watched it in the glass, waiting for it to make the first move, as if some primal part of me believed that as long as I didn't break the reflection, it couldn't touch me. But then it leaned forward, and its mouth opened. Not in a scream. Not in any sound at all. Just a gaping, endless expression of hunger. The kind of horror that didn't need to chase you, it drew you in, like a void. And I felt myself swaying forward, my balance dissolving, the weight of my body no longer in my control. I was going to fall. Into the glass. Into it. My hand shot out blindly, catching the side of the curtain just in time, and with the last shred of instinct I had left, I tore it shut again, plunging the room into thick darkness. And then, silence. Real silence. The kind that rang in your ears. The kind that meant nothing was there anymore. Or maybe everything was. I didn't check the reflection again. I didn't check the laptop, or the window, or even the front door. I crawled into the bathroom, locked the door, and sat in the tub with my knees to my chest, the shower curtain wrapped around me like a shroud. I stayed there until the sun came up. Or maybe longer. Time didn't feel real anymore. Eventually, I left. I didn't pack. I didn't even take my keys. I walked out in the same clothes I'd worn the night before, down 5 flights of stairs, and never looked back. I never told anyone. What could I say? That something eyeless climbed the side of a building to smile at me through the window? That it crawled inside and watched me from the reflection? No one wants to hear that. No one should. But sometimes, at night, when I pass certain buildings, I catch a flicker in the glass. A pale stretch of something too tall. A face that isn't quite a face. And when I do, I keep walking. I never look directly. I never stop. And I never live above the 4th floor. Not anymore. It was well past midnight when I heard the phone ring, a strange, soft chime that made my skin prickle. I had been lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, the silence of the apartment almost suffocating. The world outside was dark, save for the faint glow of streetlights filtering through the curtains. I wasn't asleep yet, but the weight of exhaustion was beginning to take hold. The sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand was an unwelcome intrusion. I didn't recognize the number, and I almost ignored it. But something made me pick up, an odd compulsion, like the call demanded attention. I didn't even say hello. I just tapped the screen, and the video began playing. The room on the other end was pitch black, save for the faint light from the phone's camera. And there I was. I froze. It was me, sitting on my own bed, dressed in the same pajamas, with the same messy hair. I could see myself on the screen, hunched forward, hands resting on my lap. It was surreal. Too real. My heart thudded in my chest as I leaned closer to the screen, trying to make sense of it. There was a slight delay, a pause that made the image move just a second after I did. I could see myself blink, adjust my position, and even shift slightly in the bed, but it was off. Not just the delay, the movements were wrong. There was something unnatural in how my reflection acted, something twisted about the way it mirrored me. Then, a cold feeling crawled up my spine as I realized something. My reflection wasn't looking at the phone. It was looking at me. The room seemed to grow colder. My breath hitched, and I felt a deep, unsettling shift in the air around me. I stopped the video, my fingers shaking, and the screen went black. I immediately turned around to check the room behind me. My own room, my own bed, my own reflection staring back at me from the mirror opposite. Empty. The bed was still made, untouched, the way I had left it hours ago. There was nothing there, no one watching me. I exhaled shakily, telling myself it was a trick of the light or some weird glitch, but it didn't sit right with me. Not at all. I didn't even realize I had fallen asleep until I woke up the next morning. My head was pounding, and my body felt heavy as if I had been lying there for days. But I wasn't in bed. I was lying on the cold, wooden floor. My phone was still beside me, turned off. Panic clawed at my chest as I sat up, trying to shake off the feeling of dread that had crept into every fiber of my being. I looked around, trying to get my bearings, but there was something off. The mirror, the one across from my bed, was cracked down the middle. The sharp, jagged lines running through it were a glaring reminder of the night before, a reminder that I wasn't alone. Not truly. I don't know how much time passed before I managed to gather myself. There was a deep sense of unease, an overwhelming sensation that I wasn't in control of anything anymore. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. The walls, once familiar and comforting, now felt like they were closing in on me. And as I stared into the broken mirror, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me. The hours that followed felt like a blur, a twisted sequence of time that never quite felt right. I was numb, moving through the motions of my day without ever truly being present in it. I went through the motions, brushing my teeth, eating something half-heartedly, trying to call a friend to shake off the chill that had settled deep within me. But there was a constant weight, an undercurrent of fear that gnawed at the edges of my thoughts. I couldn't stop replaying that video in my mind. That moment, when I saw myself on the screen, staring back at me with those empty eyes, was all I could think about. The reflection was off, distorted. It wasn't just a delay, it was something deeper, something wrong that I couldn't even begin to put into words. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that it was a malfunction, maybe a prank. But there was no logical explanation for the crack in the mirror, for the sense of being watched, of being followed by something unseen, something beyond the ordinary. I tried to ignore it, pushed it aside, but every shadow in the corner of my eye felt like a presence, every sound too sharp, too sudden. The air around me seemed to thicken, and no matter how many lights I turned on, I couldn't shake the darkness that lingered just outside of my reach. When night came again, I couldn't bring myself to sleep. The bed was the last place I wanted to be. I sat in the living room, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound breaking the silence. My eyes kept darting back to the phone, lying silently on the coffee table, the screen still dark. It wasn't like I expected another call, another video, but the thought of it happening again, a moment of clarity, a whisper of truth that I wasn't ready to face, made my heart race. I couldn't stop looking at it, couldn't help but feel like it was some kind of trap. The phone, still turned off, was like a ticking time bomb, waiting to explode. Then, just as I thought I might go mad from the anxiety, it happened. The phone vibrated once, a single buzz that cut through the silence like a knife. I froze. My pulse hammered in my throat as I slowly reached for it, my hand trembling. There was no caller ID this time, no name or number on the screen, just an empty call waiting to be answered. A video call. Without thinking, I accepted it. The same darkness. The same blurry, indistinct room, just like before. But this time, I was prepared. I wasn't going to let it happen again. I could feel my heart thudding in my chest, my fingers moving in slow motion as I swiped the screen, trying to get a better view of the room. And there it was. I was sitting in the same spot, in the same pajamas, but something was different. This time, my reflection was not mimicking my every move. It was ahead of me. It moved quicker, too quick for the lag to explain. I blinked, and it didn't. I turned my head, and it didn't follow. Instead, it stared, no, it glared, at me with those eyes, those wide, glassy eyes that felt like they could pierce right through me. I could feel my own gaze locked onto it, a horrible pull that made me want to scream, but no sound came out. Then the reflection smiled. It wasn't a smile. It was something else, something cold, something twisted, like a grin that wasn't meant for anyone alive. I felt my stomach lurch, my breath catch in my throat. The fear surged, rising, drowning me in its grip. I slammed the phone down, the screen shattering into blackness, and for a moment, everything was silent. The air grew heavy again, thick with the smell of something unfamiliar, like wet earth and old wood. My pulse was deafening in my ears. The room seemed to close in on me, walls pressing in with every breath I took. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't even think straight. But I knew, with every fiber of my being, that I was no longer alone. The following days blurred into one another, each one more suffocating than the last. The dread hadn't left me. It clung to me like a second skin. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't even find the strength to leave my apartment. Each corner of the room felt like it held some unseen danger. Every shadow seemed to whisper secrets that I was not meant to hear. I thought about calling the police. Maybe someone could explain what was happening, but I knew it wouldn't help. How could I explain this to anyone? Who would believe me? The phone was still off, untouched, lying next to me like a dead weight. It sat there, a constant reminder of that horrific image, of the reflection that wasn't mine. Every time I glanced at it, I was sure it was going to ring again, to drag me back into that nightmare. But it didn't. Then one morning, when the sun barely peeked through the blinds, I woke up on the floor again. I couldn't remember how I had gotten there, but there I was, sprawled out on the cold, unforgiving hardwood. The room was as still as ever, but something was different. The mirror. It was shattered again. This time, the cracks weren't just in the glass. They were in the reflection. I could see something, someone, behind me, lurking in the fractured pieces, something dark and distorted, waiting for me to turn around. I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled as I slowly stood, every inch of my body screaming for me to run, to leave, to get away from whatever was watching me. But it was too late. The phone rang again. It was close to 1 in the morning when I first heard the knocks. 3 distinct thuds, spaced out evenly, just like the kind you'd get from a slow, deliberate tap of a finger. At first, I thought I'd imagined it. My apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your eardrums, and everything felt a little off. I told myself it was probably some mistake, maybe a neighbor, maybe a delivery that was mistakenly sent to the wrong place. I ignored it and went back to scrolling through my phone, the dim light casting sharp shadows on the walls. But then it came again. 3 knocks. This time they were a bit harder, more forceful, like they were trying to get through the door, trying to reach me. I froze. My heart started pounding, and my mind raced. I stood up and walked over to the peephole. There was no one there. I pressed my forehead against the cold wood of the door, thinking maybe I was just being paranoid, but something gnawed at the back of my mind. I felt like I was being watched, like I wasn't alone in the room anymore. I took a slow breath and reached for my phone again. Maybe it was just a prank, someone messing around in the hallway. But when I opened the camera app and turned on the exterior security camera, everything changed. I could see the figure standing there, just outside the door, pressed up against it like a shadow that shouldn't be. The man was wearing a burlap sack over his head, no face, just the darkness of the bag. He didn't move, not even when the wind stirred the leaves outside. Just standing there. The minutes dragged on. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen, couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I even checked the camera again, hoping I was seeing things, but there he was. Still there. Watching. I didn't know how to react. Should I call someone? Should I hide? The clock ticked by, but no matter what I did, no matter how many times I checked the camera, the man never moved. It was an hour before I couldn't take it anymore. I felt suffocated in the stillness, the weight of his presence pressing against me like I was suffocating. The thought of opening the door crossed my mind, but I couldn't move. My feet felt glued to the floor. I was terrified, and there was nowhere to run. And then, just like that, I heard the sound of something scraping against the door. The camera feed flickered, static buzzing in my ear, and before I could react, it went black. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, I heard it again. 3 knocks. I stood there, motionless, in the thick silence that followed the last knock, my heart hammering violently in my chest. The screen in front of me was black, void of the eerie figure that had been standing just a moment before. I stared at it as though willing the image to come back, but it didn't. It stayed dark, empty. But I could feel it, that presence, still lingering, just outside. It was as if the very air around me had changed, thickened with an unseen weight. The tension in the room seemed to grow unbearable, pressing down on me from every direction. The walls felt closer, the floor beneath my feet almost unstable, like the entire apartment was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I wanted to scream, to shout at the man outside, but no words came. My throat was dry, constricted by an icy terror I couldn't shake. I kept thinking, this isn't real. This can't be real. I'd been up late studying before all of this started, and now I was second-guessing everything. My mind raced through explanations. Maybe it was some kind of prank, a twisted joke. But nothing made sense. Who would go through the effort of dressing like that, hiding their face, and standing so still, for so long? It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a mistake. I backed away from the door slowly, my eyes never leaving the peephole, even though I knew there was no point in looking. I tried to breathe, tried to think clearly, but my mind was like a fog, thick and suffocating. Each breath I took felt heavier than the last, my body trembling from the inside out. The knocks echoed in my head, a constant loop I couldn't escape. Minutes turned into what felt like hours as I debated whether to leave the apartment or wait it out. My phone was still in my hand, but I didn't know who to call. The campus security? The police? Could I even explain what was happening? They'd think I was crazy, or worse, that I was somehow imagining things. I didn't want to appear like I was overreacting, but something deep within me screamed that this was more than a prank, more than a simple scare. This was real, and it was dangerous. I glanced down at my phone again, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped it. The darkness on the screen mocked me, the absence of the camera feed a silent reminder that whatever I thought was happening, whatever I was trying to make sense of, was something I couldn't control. Something had tampered with the feed, and that terrified me more than anything else. Whoever this person was, they were already inside my world, already in control of the one thing that had been my safety net. I tried to recall how to reset the camera, but my mind was frozen. The very thought of moving closer to the door again made me want to vomit. Suddenly, the silence shattered again. This time, there were no knocks. Instead, I heard something else. A low, dragging sound, like a chair being scraped across the floor. It wasn't coming from behind me. It wasn't coming from inside my apartment. No, this noise was coming from right outside the door. It was methodical, slow, deliberate. My skin crawled as the noise grew louder, closer, like whatever was on the other side of that door was taking its time to make its presence known, to torment me. And then, as if to underscore the weight of the moment, there was another sound, a soft, muffled whisper, almost like a hiss, as if someone was trying to speak through the door. I pressed my back into the wall, my legs too weak to hold me. My brain was screaming at me to do something, to react, but my body refused to move. I thought I was going to pass out, the pressure in my chest so overwhelming that it felt like the walls themselves were closing in. But then, without warning, there was a knock again. 3 knocks, just like before. And they were louder this time, sharper, more insistent, like the person on the other side of the door was demanding something from me. I finally stumbled backward, away from the door, my mind spinning with confusion, fear, and dread. But then I heard something that made my blood run cold, the unmistakable sound of the doorknob turning. Slowly. Relentlessly. As if someone was on the other side, testing it, feeling for an opening. I couldn't breathe. The air had become thick and suffocating, every breath a struggle. In that moment, I realized something far worse than I had feared. The person wasn't just waiting outside. They were trying to get in. The turning of the doorknob was like the final piece of a nightmare slowly falling into place. My body was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by a combination of disbelief and terror. Each tick of the doorknob, each small twist of the metal, felt as though it was ripping away at whatever semblance of control I thought I still had. It was like I was witnessing someone else's horror story, one that didn't involve me, one where I was just a bystander trapped in someone else's nightmare. But this was real. I could feel the cold draft seeping under the door now, the air thick with dread, the tension so palpable I almost expected it to suffocate me. The doorknob rattled again, this time louder, as if someone was no longer testing the lock but trying to break through it. I heard it more than I felt it, the sensation sending shivers down my spine, because I was too terrified to move, too terrified to even think straight. I couldn't hear anything else over the pounding of my heart in my ears. The silence that had surrounded the apartment moments ago was now replaced by a noise that was all-consuming, the only thing that seemed to exist in this moment, the sound of that doorknob turning, the echo of a presence too close for comfort, too real to deny. The figure outside wasn't just standing there anymore, waiting in the cold void of the hallway. They were doing something. They were acting. The thoughts in my mind scrambled for clarity, but I couldn't seem to form a coherent response to what was happening. I should call the police. I should shout out. I don't know. I felt like my body wasn't even mine anymore, like I was watching all of this unfold from a distance, too afraid to take control, too afraid to make a decision that might make everything worse. The doorknob turned again, and I finally snapped. My legs, which had been like jelly beneath me, gave way, and I stumbled backward, falling against the wall. I didn't know how much time had passed, but in that instant, everything felt like it was on the verge of breaking. The stillness that followed the rattling of the knob was so profound, so terrifying, that it made the air feel even thicker, like it was pressing in on me, trying to suffocate any trace of rational thought. My eyes were glued to the door, not daring to look away, convinced that if I did, something would happen, something far worse than I could even imagine. And then it stopped. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. No knocking, no rattling. I couldn't even hear the hum of the refrigerator in the corner of the room. It was the kind of silence that felt unnatural, like the world itself was holding its breath. I waited. I listened. My mind raced through every possibility, every scenario, but nothing made sense. It was as if the entire universe had paused, suspended in time, just waiting for the next move. And then, the silence broke again, but this time, it wasn't the doorknob. It was something else. The sound of something scraping against the door, this time much louder than before, dragged through the silence like nails on a chalkboard. It wasn't a soft scraping. It wasn't the sound of a hand or a foot dragging along the floor. It was something far worse. It was deliberate. slow, methodical. It made my blood run cold as I realized the truth. Whatever was out there was not only trying to break in, it was toying with me. Slowly, carefully, dragging out my terror for its own enjoyment. I was hyper-aware of every detail now, as though my senses were heightened to a terrifying degree. The faint scent of old wood, the faint hum of the streetlights outside, the soft breeze that fluttered through the slightly cracked window, it all became unbearably loud. And then there it was again, the whisper. So soft I could barely hear it, but unmistakable. A whisper that didn't belong to me, didn't belong to anyone I knew. The kind of whisper that felt wrong, like it wasn't meant for the living. I couldn't make out the words, but it didn't matter. The sound itself was enough to send me into a spiral of panic. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking uncontrollably as I fumbled to dial the number for campus security, but before I could press send, the phone slipped from my grip, hitting the floor with a dull thud. It was almost as if the world had decided I didn't deserve to be helped, that there was no way out. The shadows in the room seemed to grow, stretching out along the walls, reaching for me like the fingers of something unseen. It was getting harder to breathe. My chest felt tight, and the room felt smaller, more suffocating. My instincts screamed at me to get out, to run, but my body refused to listen. I felt paralyzed, trapped in the nightmare unfolding before me. And then, before I could even react, the knocking came again. 3 sharp, almost violent knocks, this time, directly against the door, like someone was using a fist to pound against the wood. It was loud enough to shake the frame. I jumped, my heart threatening to burst out of my chest. My body felt heavy, like it was being dragged down by something I couldn't see, something that was waiting for me to make a mistake, waiting for me to step into the trap that had been set for me. I couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't wait. I couldn't stand the silence, the waiting. I grabbed the door handle, my hand trembling so much I could barely turn it. I wasn't thinking straight. I didn't even know what I was hoping to find on the other side. But as soon as I twisted the handle, the door slammed open on its own, almost like it had been waiting for me to try.